The desert wind carried death on its breath that September morning in 1882. Sarah McKenna pressed her handkerchief to her lips, tasting alkali dust and her own fear as the stagecoach lurched over another rut in the trail. Through the window, the Arizona Territory stretched endlessly red rock and thorny mesquite beneath a merciless sun. Not much farther now, Miss McKenna, Reverend Whitmore assured her from the opposite bench. The elderly minister's face glistened with perspiration despite the early hour. Your father's ranch lies just beyond those mesas. Sarah managed a tight smile. 3 months had passed since she'd last seen the Double K Ranch. 3 months since she'd traveled to St. Louis to purchase her wedding trousseau. Now, with her trunk full of silk and lace secured atop the coach, she was returning to marry Thomas Hartley Steady, respectable Thomas who managed the neighboring spread. The driver, Jake Sullivan, called down from his perch. Apache country ahead. Folks, keep them windows up and prayers handy. Mrs. Elmira Dobson, a merchant's wife from Tucson, clutched her carpetbag tighter. Savages, she hissed. The army should have driven every last one of them to the reservation by now. Some refused to go, Reverend Whitmore said quietly. They cling to the old ways, hiding in the mountains. Sarah's fingers found the cameo at her throat, her mother's, worn smooth by years of touching. Elizabeth McKenna had died when Sarah was 12, taken by fever in a land that seemed to swallow gentle souls whole. Her father had grown harder after that, pouring his grief into building his cattle empire. The marriage to Thomas had been his idea, a merger of lands as much as lives. The coach slowed. Sarah sensed the horses' unease in their stuttering gait. Jake's voice drifted down, tense now. Something ain't right. Then the world exploded. The first arrow took Jake through the throat. He toppled from the driver's box without a sound. The horses screamed and bolted as war cries split the morning air. Sarah was thrown against the coach wall as it careened wildly, driverless now, wheels bouncing over rocks and sage. Dear God, preserve us. Reverend Whitmore gripped his Bible as shapes materialized from the landscape bronze warriors on painted ponies, moving like smoke given deadly form. The coach tipped, balanced on 2 wheels for a horrible moment, then crashed onto its side. Sarah's head struck wood. Stars burst across her vision. Through the chaos, she heard Mrs. Dobson screaming, saw the Reverend fumbling for the door that now faced skyward. Hooves thundered closer. A warrior dropped through the door opening, knife flashing. Mrs. Dobson's screams cut short. The Reverend raised his Bible like a shield, but the blade found him anyway. Blood spattered Sarah's traveling dress. Hands seized her, dragging her up through the door into blazing sunlight. She fought wildly, her mother's teachings about ladylike behavior forgotten in pure animal panic. Her nails raked across painted skin. An elbow found ribs. For a moment, she almost broke free. Then she saw him. He sat his horse like he'd been born to it, watching her struggle with his warriors. Unlike the others, he wore no war paint, letting his face speak its own fierce language. High cheekbones, eyes black as obsidian, hair falling past his shoulders in a midnight river. Young, perhaps 25 summers, but his gaze held an ancient weight. He spoke in Apache, voice carrying absolute authority. The hands holding Sarah loosened but didn't release. She stood trembling in her torn dress, acutely aware of how she must look pale as milk. Hair tumbling from its pins, green eyes wide with terror. The warrior dismounted in one fluid motion. Sarah forced herself not to step back as he approached. He was tall for an Apache, lean-muscled, moving with a predator's economy. When he stopped before her, she caught his scent leather, smoke, and something wild. "You are strong," he said in accented English. "Good. Weak women die quickly here." "I'm not," Sarah's voice cracked. She swallowed, tried again. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. He reached out, and she flinched. but he merely lifted a strand of her auburn hair, letting it slip through his fingers like silk. "Hair like sunset," he murmured. Then, louder, "I am Nietzsche. It means son of thunder in your tongue. And you—" He circled her slowly, appraising. "You will be my woman." "I'll die first." The words came out steadier than Sarah felt. "Perhaps." He completed his circle, standing before her again. But not today. He spoke again in Apache. 2 warriors began stripping the coach of valuables, while others caught the panicked horses. Sarah watched numbly as they rifled through her trunk, tossing her carefully chosen wedding clothes into the dust. A warrior held up her white satin gown, laughing, before using it to wipe blood from his knife. "Please!" She hated how her voice shook. "My father has money. He'll pay—" "Your father's gold cannot buy what was taken from us." Nietzsche's voice hardened. "Land, honor, lives." He moved so swiftly she had no time to react. One moment she stood on trembling legs. The next, she was swept up in arms like iron bands. He carried her to his horse, a magnificent black stallion with a white blaze down its face. "No!" Sarah fought wildly, but he might as well have been stone. He vaulted onto the horse with her still in his arms, settling her across his lap with horrifying ease. "Be still," he commanded, one arm clamping around her waist. "Unless you wish to fall and break your neck." The other warriors had mounted, some leading the captured stage horses. Smoke rose from the coach. They'd set it ablaze, destroying any evidence along with the bodies inside. Sarah's stomach roiled. Nietzsche spoke a sharp command, and his war party moved out at a swift pace. Sarah had one last glimpse of the burning coach, black smoke rising like a prayer against the morning sky, before they plunged into a landscape of red stone and shadow. "The Apache warrior has taken a bride," Nietzsche said against her ear, his breath warm on her neck. "You belong to me now, sunset woman." "I belong to no one," Sarah gritted out, even as tears traced paths through the dust on her cheeks. "And I'll never stop fighting you. Never." His arm tightened fractionally. "Good. A warrior's woman should have fire, but fire must learn when to burn and when to bank its flames, or it consumes itself." They rode hard through the morning, putting distance between themselves and any pursuit. Sarah's world narrowed to the rhythm of hoofbeats, the feel of Nietzsche's chest against her back, the arm that held her with implacable strength. Her throat burned with thirst, her skin blistered in the sun, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of complaining. As the sun reached its zenith, they entered a canyon whose walls rose like ancient sentinels. The temperature dropped blessedly in the shadows. Nietzsche called a halt beside a small spring bubbling from the rocks. He dismounted and lifted her down. Sarah's legs buckled. Hours of riding astride had left her muscles screaming. She would have fallen if he hadn't steadied her. "Drink," he ordered, guiding her to the spring. Pride warred with desperate thirst. Thirst won. Sarah dropped to her knees and cupped the cool water to her lips, aware of him watching her. When she'd drunk her fill, she sat back on her heels, water dripping from her chin. "Thomas will come for me," she said, needing to believe it. "He'll bring the army. You'll hang for this." Nietzsche crouched beside her, his face unreadable. "You're Thomas." He spoke the name like it tasted bitter. "He is the man you would marry." "Yes," Sarah lifted her chin. "A good man, a civilized man." A weak man who could not protect his woman. Nietzsche's eyes glittered dangerously. "Now she is mine. I am not." His hand shot out, gripping her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You are what I say you are. Fight me, hate me. Try to escape this, I expect. But do not lie to yourself. Your old life burned with that coach. You are Apache property now." Sarah jerked free and slapped him with all her strength. The crack echoed off the canyon walls. Warriors paused in watering their horses, hands moving to weapons. Nietzsche's head had barely turned from the blow. A red mark bloomed on his bronzed cheek. For a heartbeat. Violence crackled in the air like lightning before a storm. Then, incredibly, he smiled a fierce baring of teeth that was equal parts threat and approval. "Yes," he said softly. "You will do well. If you survive." He rose and walked away, leaving Sarah kneeling by the spring with her palm stinging and her world in ashes around her. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. But even in her despair, a small flame of defiance flickered. She would survive. She would escape, and she would make Nishi regret the day he'd claimed her as his bride. The Apache warrior had stolen her body, her spirit. She vowed would never be conquered. The moon hung like a silver peso in the desert sky when Sarah made her first escape attempt. 3 days of hard riding had brought them deep into the Chiricahua Mountains, a maze of peaks and hidden valleys where the Apache moved like ghosts. Her captors had grown comfortable with her seeming compliance. She'd stopped fighting, stopped protesting, bided her time. Now, as the war party slept around dying embers, she eased from beneath the blanket Nietzsche had thrown over her. The rawhide binding her wrists had loosened during the night, heart hammering. She worked her hands free, inch by agonizing inch. Nietzsche lay an arm's length away, chest rising and falling steadily, even in sleep. He looked dangerous, one hand resting on the knife at his belt, positioned where he could see the camp's perimeter. Sarah held her breath as she crept past him, bare feet silent on the rocky ground. The horses were picketed just beyond the firelight. If she could reach them. A shadow detached from a boulder. The sentry, she'd forgotten about the sentry. He opened his mouth to shout warning, but Sarah was already running, crashing through the underbrush like a spooked deer. Behind her, the camp erupted in confusion. She ran blindly in the darkness, thorns tearing at her already ruined dress, stones cutting her feet. The mountain dropped away suddenly, a steep slope of loose shale. She tumbled down it, skin scraping raw, coming to rest in a dry wash at the bottom. "Get up, move!" But her body wouldn't obey. Everything hurt. Blood seeped from a dozen cuts. When she tried to stand, her ankle buckled, sending her back to her knees. Hoofbeats. They'd found her already. Sarah crawled behind a fallen cottonwood, pressing herself flat as riders appeared on the ridge above. Torchlight swept the slope. Nietzsche's voice carried clearly in the still air. Speaking in Apache, the warriors spread out, beginning their descent. There was no escape now, but Sarah grabbed a fist-sized rock anyway. She wouldn't go meekly. He found her, of course, dismounting with that fluid grace, approaching her hiding spot without hurry. When he rounded the log, Sarah swung the rock at his head. He caught her wrist easily, applying just enough pressure to make her drop her weapon. "Foolish woman." His voice was flat, controlled, but she could see fury in the rigid set of his shoulders. "You would die out here, slowly, painfully." "Better than," Sarah gasped as he hauled her upright, her injured ankle sending lightning up her leg. "Then what being my woman?" He swept her up despite her struggles, carrying her back to his horse. "You know nothing of death in the desert, the thirst that drives men mad, the sun that strips flesh from bones, the creatures that feed on the weak." He set her on the horse and vaulted up behind her, one arm imprisoning her against his chest. As they rode back to camp, he spoke close to her ear, each word precise as a blade. "Try again, and I will hobble you like a horse. You think me cruel, I'm keeping you alive." At camp, he tended her injuries with surprising gentleness, cleaning cuts with water from his own supply, binding her ankle with strips torn from her petticoat. Sarah endured his ministrations in stony silence. But when he moved to retie her hands, something broke inside her. "Why?" The word came out raw. "Why did you take me? What did I ever do to you?" Nietzsche paused, the rawhide loose in his hands. Firelight played across his face, highlighting the harsh plains. "You nothing. Your people." His jaw tightened. "Everything." He began wrapping her wrists, but looser than before. My sister was 14 summers. Beautiful, innocent. Soldiers came to our village while the men hunted. They took her and 6 other girls to their fort. For entertainment. Sarah's stomach clenched. I'm sorry, but I didn't. She escaped after 2 moons, walked the desert alone to find us. But she was... He paused, searching for words. Broken inside. The shame was too heavy. She walked into the river one morning and did not walk out. His hands had stilled on the bindings. Sarah could barely breathe. What was her name? Morning Star. The words held infinite tenderness. She laughed like water over stones. Nietzsche, Sarah swallowed hard. I grieve for your sister, truly, but I'm not those soldiers. Punishing me won't bring her back. His hands tightened suddenly, though not enough to hurt. No, but taking their women, making them Apache, this is justice. Your people stole our children for your schools, our women for your sport. Now I take you. That's not justice. That's revenge. Sometimes they are the same. He finished the binding and moved away. Sleep. Tomorrow we reach the stronghold. Sarah lay wakefully, staring at the stars. The ropes chafed her wrists, but worse was the chafing in her mind. She'd wanted her captors to be simple savages, easier to hate, but Nietzsche's pain was real. His loss profound. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it made him human in a way that frightened her more than his violence. The next day's journey took them higher into the mountains, following paths Sarah couldn't see, guided by landmarks invisible to her eyes. The warriors remained vigilant. They were still in disputed territory, where army patrols might venture. At midday, they encountered another Apache band, women and children fleeing southward, faces gaunt with exhaustion. Nietzsche called a halt, sharing precious supplies. Sarah watched an Apache mother clutch her infant, saw the fear in her eyes, and felt her certainties crack further. Your army burned their rancheria, Nietzsche told her, noting her gaze. Killed the men, scattered the families. These go to Mexico, hoping for sanctuary. The army doesn't kill women and children, Sarah protested automatically. Nietzsche's look was pitying. You believe what you need to believe. They pushed harder after that, urgency driving them. Sarah dozed fitfully against Nietzsche's chest, jerked awake when his body tensed. Riders approaching, but the scout's whistle identified them as Apache. The newcomers brought news that made Nietzsche's face darken. They spoke rapidly in their language, gesturing northward. Sarah caught one word she recognized: soldiers. Your Thomas moves quickly, Nietzsche told her when the scouts departed. He brings 2 companies of cavalry. They will not find us. Something must have shown in her face because his arm tightened around her. Do not hope too hard, Sunset Woman. These mountains have swallowed armies whole. They climbed through the afternoon, the trail growing treacherous. Sarah's fear of heights warred with exhaustion. When the path narrowed to a ledge barely wider than the horses, she pressed her face against Nietzsche's chest, unable to look at the dizzying drop. Be easy, he murmured, his voice gentler than she'd heard it. Shadow Walker has carried me through worse. He will not fail. Night was falling when they reached the stronghold, a hidden valley cupped in the mountain's palm, accessible only through a narrow defile that 2 men could defend against hundreds. Sarah had expected teepees, but found instead dome-shaped shelters of brush and hide, blending perfectly with the landscape. As they rode in, Apache emerged from the gathering darkness. Warriors, women, children, elders, all stared at Sarah with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. A woman spat at Shadow Walker's hooves. A child threw a pebble that stung Sarah's cheek. Nietzsche spoke sharply, and the crowd parted. But Sarah felt their eyes following her, heard their murmurs. She didn't need to understand Apache to know they were discussing her fate. He stopped before a shelter larger than the others, lifting her down from the horse. Sarah's legs trembled but held. Pride wouldn't let her show weakness before these people who clearly wished her ill. An elderly woman emerged from the shelter, silver-haired but straight-backed, with eyes like chips of obsidian. She studied Sarah with unnerving intensity, then spoke at length with Nietzsche. Their exchange grew heated. The old woman gestured dismissively at Sarah several times. "My grandmother," Nietzsche explained curtly. "She says I am a fool to bring trouble to our people for a pale-eyes woman." "Your grandmother is wise," Sarah said. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "She also says you have spine, for a white woman, that perhaps you will not die as quickly as she expected." He led her into a smaller shelter nearby, ducking through the low entrance. Inside, buffalo robes covered the ground, and baskets lined the edges. It smelled of smoke and sage and something indefinably male. "This is my wickiup," he said. "You will stay here." The implications hit Sarah like cold water. "I won't. You can't expect me to." "I expect nothing." His voice was tired suddenly. "You are under my protection. None will touch you while I live. Sleep where you will. But if you leave this shelter at night, I cannot promise your safety. Some here have lost more than I to your people. Their hatred runs deep." He gave her water and a cake of dried meat and mesquite bean meal, then left her alone. Sarah huddled on the buffalo robes, exhaustion warring with fear. Outside, she could hear the camp settling for the night, children being hushed, dogs barking, the murmur of voices. She thought of Thomas, somewhere in these mountains with his soldiers. Was he thinking of her? Did he imagine her suffering? Perhaps already dead, the Sarah who'd left for St. Louis would have been certain of rescue, of her world's superiority. But that Sarah had never seen Apache mothers fleeing with hungry children, never heard the pain in Nietzsche's voice when he spoke of his sister. When Nietzsche returned, Sarah pretended sleep, watching through her lashes as he arranged his weapons within easy reach. Then stretched out on the opposite side of the shelter. The space between them might have been an ocean. "I know you wake," he said quietly. "Tomorrow begins your new life. Rest while you can." Sarah turned her back to him, pulling a buffalo robe up to her chin, but his words echoed in the darkness. Your new life. As if her old one had truly ended in flames with that stagecoach. As if Sarah McKenna, rancher's daughter and bride-to-be, had died in the desert. Perhaps she had. The question now was who would emerge from those ashes. Dawn came harsh and sudden to the Apache stronghold. Sarah woke to find Nietzsche already gone. Her wrists unbound, a small mercy that somehow made her feel more captive than the ropes had. She emerged from the wickiup to face her first full day among the Apache. The camp was already alive with activity. Women tended fires. Ground corn between stones. Scraped hides stretched on frames. Children ran between the shelters, their laughter at odds with the hostile stares that followed Sarah's every move. Warriors checked weapons and horses, preparing for hunts or raids. An elderly woman approached not Nietzsche's grandmother, but another with deep-set eyes and a face mapped by years of desert sun. She thrust a water jug at Sarah, speaking harshly in Apache and pointing toward the spring at the valley's edge. Sarah understood. She was to work, to earn her keep or suffer the consequences. Pride warred with practicality as she took the heavy clay vessel. The woman cuffed her shoulder not gently and pointed again. The path to the spring led past groups of women who fell silent at her approach. One, younger than the others with a terrible scar bisecting her left cheek, deliberately extended her foot as Sarah passed. She stumbled, water jug crashing to the ground, shattering into pieces. Laughter erupted. The scarred woman, Leilu, Sarah would later learn, stood over her with contempt, twisting her features. "Clumsy white witch," she spat in accented English. "You bring curse to our people." Sarah pushed herself up, clay shards cutting her palms. Blood welled, bright red against her pale skin. She met Leilu's stare steadily. "I didn't ask to be here." "No, but you are here, taking food from our children's mouths, taking the attention of a warrior who should choose Apache woman." Leilu's eyes glittered dangerously. Maybe you fall from cliff. Maybe snake finds you in your sleep. Many accidents in mountains. Enough. Nietzsche's grandmother appeared, striking the ground with her walking stick. She spoke rapidly to Leilu, who backed away reluctantly. Then she turned to Sarah, her English heavily accented but clear. You, come. Sarah followed the elder to her dwelling, where the old woman examined her bleeding hands with clinical detachment. She applied a poultice of crushed plants that stung fiercely, then bound them with soft leather. I am Nana, she said, working with practiced efficiency. Mother of Nietzsche's mother, may she walk in peace. You live because my grandson claims you. This brings complications. I don't want to be claimed. I want to go home. Nana's laugh was dry as desert wind. Want means nothing here. You adapt or die. Simple choice. She handed Sarah another water jug, wooden this time, and sturdier. Fetch water, then I show you woman's work. You learn, or camp will make sure you regret. They test you now. Show weakness. They destroy you. Show strength. She shrugged. Maybe they only hate you. The second trip to the spring went without incident, though Sarah felt eyes tracking her movements. The water was heavy, the return path steep. By the time she delivered the jug to Nana, sweat soaked her torn dress despite the morning's coolness. Good. Now, grinding corn. Nana led her to where women worked with stone medities, crushing dried corn into meal. The repetitive motion looked simple. The reality proved brutal. Within minutes, Sarah's shoulders burned. Within an hour, her back screamed protest. The other women chatted among themselves, occasionally laughing at some comment Sarah couldn't understand, but suspected involved her. When the sun reached its zenith, her hands were raw beneath their bandages, her arms trembling with exhaustion. Nana inspected her meager pile of cornmeal and made a disapproving sound. Child could do better. Again. Sarah wanted to throw the grinding stone at her. Instead, she resumed work, channeling her fury into each stroke. She wouldn't break. They wouldn't see her cry. The afternoon brought new torments, gathering wood under the scorching sun, her fair skin burning despite the tattered remains of her bonnet, scraping flesh from hides until her stomach roiled from the smell. Always watched, always judged, always found wanting. When Leilu accidentally knocked over Sarah's water gourd, spilling her precious ration into the dust, something snapped. Sarah grabbed the woman's wrist as she turned away. Next time you want to play games, she said quietly, face me directly. I may be your prisoner, but I'm no coward. Leilu jerked free, hand moving to the knife at her belt. Women around them stopped working, tension crackling like static before a storm. You think you brave white witch, Leilu hissed. You think because Nietzsche protects you, you are safe, he will tire of you. And then what? Sarah stepped closer, exhaustion and fury making her reckless. You'll finally get your chance. Go ahead, try now. For a heartbeat, violence hung in the air. Then Nana's walking stick cracked across both their shoulders. Foolish girls, you waste energy on hatred when survival needs all strength. Leilu, go. Your own work waits. You, she pointed at Sarah. Come, council meets. Sarah followed, legs unsteady. She'd stood up to Leilu, but at what cost making enemies here could prove fatal. The council met in the shade of ancient cottonwoods. Elders seated in a semicircle with warriors standing behind. Nietzsche was there, face unreadable as Sarah was brought before them. The debate that followed was entirely in Apache, but she understood its essence from the gestures, the glances thrown her way. They were deciding her fate. One elder, scarred from countless battles, spoke at length while pointing at her. His tone suggested he wasn't arguing for afternoon tea. Others nodded agreement. A woman elder countered, her words sharp with dissent. The argument grew heated. Finally, Nana rose. Her voice carried absolute authority as she addressed the council. Whatever she said caused murmurs of surprise. She gestured to Sarah, then to the camp, speaking at length. When she finished, silence stretched taut. The scarred elder spat in the dust but nodded curtly. The council began dispersing. "What did she say?" Sarah asked Nietzsche as he approached. "My grandmother proposed a test. You live as Apache woman for 1 moon. If you survive, prove useful. Cause no trouble, then council decides again. If not..." He didn't finish. "And you, what do you say?" His eyes were dark, unreadable. "I say you are stronger than you look, but strength alone means nothing here. You must learn our ways, or the desert will claim you regardless of what council decides." He led her back toward his wickiup, but stopped at another shelter where an elderly man worked with plants and herbs. "This is Joseph," Nietzsche said. "He has some English. He will teach you healing plants, which to eat, which bring death. Pay attention. Your life depends on such knowledge." Joseph looked up from his work, studying Sarah with eyes milky from cataracts. "Another white woman who thinks she knows suffering," he said softly. "Desert will teach her otherwise." Sarah spent the remaining daylight hours with Joseph, memorizing plants, their uses, their dangers. He was a patient teacher but unforgiving of mistakes. When she confused death camas with wild onion, a potentially fatal error, he made her start over from the beginning. By evening, her head swam with information. Mescal bean for ceremony but deadly in wrong amounts. Prickly pear for food and medicine. Creosote for infections. Sacred datura for visions and death. A pharmacy of survival hidden in the harsh landscape. She returned to Nietzsche's wickiup to find him cleaning his rifle. Movements precise and automatic. He'd brought her food, venison stew and ash cakes, which she devoured despite its unfamiliar taste. Hunger was a powerful seasoning. "You stood against Leilu today," he said without looking up from his weapon. "Brave but foolish. She started it. She lost her husband and son to soldiers 6 moons past. Her hatred burns hot." He set the rifle aside, meeting her eyes. "You cannot fight every Apache who hates whites. You would do nothing else. Then what should I do? Let them torment me. Endure. Work. Learn. Prove you are more than weak white woman. Some will never accept you, this is truth. But others watch and judge. Give them reason to see you as person, not enemy." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Person, I'm property. Remember your captive bride." His jaw tightened. "Would you prefer I had left you for the desert, or for warriors who would not treat you with restraint?" The implications chilled her. She'd been so focused on Nietzsche as captor, she hadn't considered alternatives. No." "Then stop fighting what cannot be changed. Use your strength for survival, not stubbornness." They sat in uncomfortable silence as darkness gathered outside. Finally, Sarah asked, "Why did you really take me, not just revenge for your sister? You could have killed me with the others." Nietzsche was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "When you fought my warriors, even knowing you could not win, I saw something familiar. Spirit that refuses to break? Perhaps I am fool, as grandmother says. But such spirit should not be wasted. So you'll waste it slowly, instead working me to death, letting your people torment me. Life is work. Life is hardship. Apache know this from birth." He gestured around the simple shelter. "You think we choose this hiding in mountains, scratching survival from stones. Once we roamed freely, following buffalo, trading with Mexican towns. Now we run like rabbits from your army." His voice held such profound weariness that Sarah felt an unwanted stab of sympathy. "That's not my fault." "No, but you benefit from our loss. Your ranch sits on Apache land. Your cattle drink from Apache springs. Your life of silk dresses and soft beds built on our bones." Sarah wanted to protest, to deny, but the words stuck in her throat. Hadn't her father boasted of claiming prime grazing land, of driving off the savages who'd contested it? "I'm tired," she said instead, the weight of the day crashing over her. Nietzsche gestured to the buffalo robes. Sleep. Tomorrow brings new lessons. Sarah curled into the furs, every muscle aching. Through the smoke hole above, stars glittered in the desert sky, the same stars she'd watched from her bedroom at the ranch, yet impossibly distant now. She thought of Thomas, of her father, of the life torn away. But those thoughts brought only pain. Better to focus on tomorrow, on survival, on proving to these people and herself that she wouldn't be broken. The Apache might have stolen her body, but her spirit remained her own. Battered, perhaps, tested certainly, but unbroken. For now, that had to be enough. The trouble came on Sarah's 10th day in the Apache camp. She had begun to find a rhythm grinding corn before dawn, hauling water, learning plants from Joseph, enduring Leilu's provocations with stony silence. Her hands had hardened, her fair skin darkened despite her efforts to stay covered. She was surviving, if not thriving. Then Kuruk arrived. He rode in at midday with 3 other warriors, leading pack horses laden with goods blankets, metal tools, sacks of flour, trading spoils or raid plunder. Sarah couldn't tell, but the way the camp received him spoke of his status. Women called greetings. Children ran to see what he'd brought. Warriors clasped his arm in welcome. Sarah first saw him at the spring, kneeling to fill her water jug. A shadow fell across her, and she looked up to find a warrior studying her with frank appraisal. Older than Nietzsche, perhaps 35 summers, with a cruel twist to his mouth, an old pain in his eyes. So, he said in clear English, you are Nietzsche's white woman. Sarah rose carefully, jug balanced on her hip. I'm nobody's woman. His laugh was harsh. You say this, yet you sleep in his wickiup. You wear his protection like invisible blanket. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the trail dust on him. I am Kuruk. My woman died 3 moons past. Fever took her and our unborn child. I'm sorry for your loss. Sorry. His face hardened. White man's disease killed her. White man's whiskey weakened her body until fever found easy prey. His hand shot out, gripping her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Maybe I take white woman in trade, balance the scales. Sarah jerked free. Touch me again and you'll regret it. Brave words. But Nietzsche is young, still learning to lead. I have fought since before he was born. When I challenge his claim, who do you think warriors will support? He left her at the spring, but Sarah's hands shook as she carried the water back. She'd seen the speculation in his eyes, the calculation. Kuruk would be trouble, she felt it in her bones. That evening, the camp gathered to hear news from the wider world. Kuruk spoke of army movements, of other bands forced onto reservations, of Mexican troops massing at the border. The mood grew somber as he painted a picture of the Apache world shrinking, pressed from all sides. When he finished, he turned to Nietzsche. You bring danger to us. Keeping this woman, already soldiers search the mountains. For her, they will not stop. Let them search, Nietzsche replied calmly. These mountains have secrets they will never learn. Until someone betrays us for army gold, or until they follow our trails because we grow careless, distracted. Kuruk's eyes found Sarah across the fire. She is cursed. I say give her to the desert and be done. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Some nodded agreement, others looked uncertain. Sarah felt the mood shifting, becoming dangerous. Nietzsche stood slowly, hand resting on his knife. She is under my protection. This was decided by council. Council can decide again, or... Kuruk rose as well, matching Nietzsche's stance. We settle this as warriors. You are skilled, but untested as war leader. I have led many raids, taken many scalps. Do you challenge my experience? The camp held its breath. Sarah saw the trap if Nietzsche backed down. He lost face. If he fought and lost, she lost her only protection. I challenge nothing, Nietzsche said evenly. But my decisions stand until council says otherwise. The woman stays. Karuk smiled, cold and predatory. Then I invoke the old way. Let combat decide who has the right to her. Gasps and mutters from the assembled Apache. Nana's voice cut through, sharp with anger, but Karuk responded in Apache, gesturing formally. Whatever he said caused the elders to exchange troubled looks. "What's happening?" Sarah whispered to Joseph, who'd appeared at her elbow. "Karuk claims widow's right, his woman dead. He can challenge for another old tradition, rarely used now, but legitimate." The medicine man shook his head. Nietzsche must accept or seem weak. Sarah watched Nietzsche's face, saw the moment he accepted what must happen. "Tomorrow," he said, "when sun reaches the peak, choose your weapon." "Knives," Karuk replied immediately. "Unless the young warrior fears to face me close." Nietzsche's smile was sharp as a blade. "Knives, then, until one yields or cannot continue." The gathering dispersed with excited chatter. Sarah found herself swept along with the women, Leilu smirking at her distress. "Maybe tomorrow I do not have to look at your pale face. Karuk does not fight gentle." In the wiki-up, Sarah confronted Nietzsche. "This is insane. You can't fight him over me like I'm a prize horse." "Would you prefer I let him take you?" Nietzsche checked his knife's edge, testing it against his thumb. "Karuk is not kind to women, especially when drinking. His wife lived in fear. That's not, I don't want anyone fighting over me. Then you should not have been captured." He set the knife aside, looking at her fully. "This is our way. Karuk challenges my authority through you. If I refuse, I am no longer war leader, no longer able to protect anyone." Sarah sank onto the buffalo robes, head in her hands. "I never asked for any of this." "No, but the spider does not ask to be caught in the hawk's talons. It simply must deal with reality." He was quiet a moment. "Are you so eager to belong to Karuk?" "I don't want to belong to anyone." The words burst out, raw with frustration. "I want to go home. I want my life back. I want—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "You want the impossible, like a child crying for the moon." His voice wasn't unkind, merely matter-of-fact. "Tomorrow I fight. If I win, nothing changes. If I lose, pray Karuk drinks himself to death quickly." Sleep eluded Sarah that night. She lay rigid on her side of the wiki-up, listening to Nietzsche's steady breathing, imagining tomorrow's violence. When dawn finally came, she was hollow-eyed and exhausted. The camp buzzed with anticipation. A circle was cleared near the central fire pit, warriors forming the boundary. Karuk waited there, stripped to the waist, muscles coiled with lethal promise. Scars mapped his torso, a history of violence survived. Nietzsche emerged from the wiki-up, having spent the morning in preparation. He too was bare-chested, his younger body unmarked by comparison. Sarah wanted to call out, to stop this madness, but Nana's firm hand on her arm held her in place. "Watch," the old woman commanded. "Learn who your protector truly is." The combatants faced each other, knives catching the noon sun. An elder spoke ritual words, then stepped back. Karuk attacked first, a lightning slash that would have opened most men's throat, but Nietzsche flowed aside like water, his own blade whisking past Karuk's ribs, drawing first blood in a thin red line. The older warrior snarled. Adjusting his stance, they circled, testing, probing. Sarah's heart hammered as steel rang against steel, as bodies twisted and struck with deadly grace. Karuk's experience showed. He fought with brutal efficiency, using his weight advantage to press Nietzsche back. A faint high followed by a low sweep nearly hamstrung the younger man. Only Nietzsche's speed saved him, but blood now flowed from a gash on his thigh. "The pup bleeds," Karuk taunted. "Soon the white woman will know a real warrior's touch." Nietzsche said nothing, but his attacks grew fiercer. Sarah saw what others might miss he was learning as he fought. adapting to Kuruk's patterns. Where the older warrior relied on tested combinations, Nietzsche improvised, fluid and unpredictable. The fight raged on. Both men bled from multiple wounds, breath coming harsh. The crowd had fallen silent, sensing the combat had passed beyond ritual to something deadlier. Kuruk lunged, overcommitting to what should have been a killing stroke. Nietzsche dropped beneath it, his own blade flashing up. Kuruk twisted desperately, avoiding disembowelment but taking a deep cut across his stomach. He staggered back, free hand pressed to the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Yield," Nietzsche said, voice steady despite his own injuries. Never, Kuruk charged with berserker fury. What happened next was too fast for Sarah to follow. Bodies collided. Blades sought flesh. And then Kuruk was on the ground, Nietzsche's knife at his throat. "Yield," Nietzsche repeated, pressing just enough to dimple skin. "You fought with honor. Do not make me finish this." For a heartbeat, Kuruk's eyes blazed defiance. Then, slowly, he released his knife. "I yield." Nietzsche stepped back, swaying slightly. The crowd erupted in mixed reactions, cheers, arguments, excited chatter. Sarah broke free from Nana, rushing to Nietzsche as he limped from the circle. "Let me see," she demanded, examining his wounds with hands that shook only slightly. The thigh cut was deepest, bleeding freely. "You need stitching." Later. But he leaned on her more than pride would normally allow, letting her guide him to the wickiup. Inside, Sarah worked with focused intensity, using skills Joseph had taught her. She cleaned wounds with Tiswin Apache beer that made Nietzsche hiss through his teeth. Her stitches were clumsy but functional, closing the worst damage. "Why?" she asked as she worked. "Why risk this for someone you kidnapped?" He studied her face as if seeing it for the first time. "You think I fight only for you. Kuruk challenges more than my claim to one woman. He questions my right to lead, my decisions for our band's survival. But I'm the excuse he used." "Yes," Nietzsche winced as she tied off a stitch. "And perhaps I do not wish to see you broken by such a man. You have spirit. It would be waste to see it crushed by cruelty." Sarah's hand stilled. It was the closest he'd come to admitting any feeling beyond possession. "I still hate what you did, kidnapping me, killing those innocent people." "I know." His voice was quiet. "But hate is not all you feel now. This troubles you." She couldn't deny it. These past days had complicated her emotions beyond recognition. The man who'd stolen her had also protected her. Her captor had bled for her. Nothing was simple anymore. "Rest," she said, finishing the last bandage. "You've lost too much blood." He caught her wrist as she turned away. "Kuruk will not challenge again, but others may. Stay close to camp. Trust no one fully except Nana." "I don't trust anyone," Sarah said, but the words felt hollow. That evening, Kuruk left the camp with his followers, his departure watched by many. Leilu's hostility seemed tempered by new respect, though she still wouldn't meet Sarah's eyes. As Sarah prepared the evening meal, a task that came naturally now she caught herself humming, the sound startled her into silence. When had she begun feeling anything but misery here? When had survival become something more? She looked at Nietzsche, resting but alert, hand never far from his weapons, her captor, her protector, her enemy who was becoming... what? The questions had no easy answers, like everything in this harsh land. Truth was as complex as the shadows cast by firelight on stone. Sarah was learning to navigate those shadows, to find her way in a world that defied her previous understanding. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she was alive, unharmed, and oddly grateful. It was enough. It had to be. The sandstorm struck without warning on their 15th day out from camp. Sarah had joined a foraging party. Her knowledge of edible plants had improved enough that the women grudgingly accepted her presence. They were gathering piñon nuts in the foothills when the western sky turned an ominous yellow-brown. "Haboob!" one woman cried, pointing at the advancing wall of dust that towered like a mountain of earth reaching for heaven. The Apache scattered, seeking shelter. Sarah followed blindly. Her guide already vanished in the sudden twilight. Sand whipped around her, stinging exposed skin, filling her mouth and nose. She stumbled over rocks, completely disoriented. A hand grabbed her arm, Nishi, materializing from the chaos like a spirit. He pulled her against a cliff face, finding a shallow overhang that offered minimal protection. The storm hit with full fury, turning day to night, scouring everything in its path. They pressed against the rock, Nishi shielding her with his body as sand devils danced around them. Sarah buried her face in his chest, breathing through the fabric of his shirt. Time lost meaning in the howling darkness. When the worst finally passed, they were alone. The landscape had transformed, familiar landmarks erased, new dunes sculpted by the wind. Their horses had fled. No sign of the others remained. "The storm scattered everyone," Nietzsche said, spitting sand. "They will return to camp. We must do the same." But which direction was camp? The sun was hidden behind lingering dust clouds. Sarah watched Nishi study the terrain, saw uncertainty flicker across his features before he masked it. "You don't know the way," she said. It wasn't an accusation, just truth. "The storm changed much, but I will find it." He started walking, choosing a direction with more confidence than Sarah suspected he felt. They walked through the afternoon, rationing the single water gourd that had survived the storm. The landscape was alien wind-carved rocks like frozen screams. Thorny ocotillo reaching skeletal fingers skyward. No water, no shade, no mercy. By evening, they were truly lost. Nietzsche's attempts to locate familiar landmarks had led them in circles. Pride kept him from admitting it, but Sarah read the truth in his increasingly grim expression. "We need shelter," she said as darkness approached. "And water, soon." He nodded curtly. Scanning the terrain, a darker shadow against a cliff face caught his eye, a cave mouth, promising protection from the night's cold. They approached cautiously, Nietzsche throwing rocks inside to check for inhabitants. Only echoes answered. The cave was deeper than it appeared, tunneling back into the mountain. They made camp near the entrance where fresh air still circulated. Without fire materials, they would endure a cold night. "Tomorrow I will find the way," Nietzsche said, his voice carrying forced certainty. Sarah said nothing. What was there to say? They were lost in hostile terrain with little water and no food. Recriminations would only waste energy. As darkness deepened, the temperature plummeted. Desert nights were cruel in their reversal. The same land that scorched by day could freeze a person by night. Sarah hugged her knees, shivering despite her best efforts. "Come," Nietzsche said roughly. "Body warmth is survival. Nothing more." She hesitated, then crawled to where he sat against the cave wall. He pulled her against him, wrapping them both in his blanket. It was the closest they'd been since that first day on horseback, but necessity stripped any other meaning from the contact. Still, Sarah was acutely aware of his solid presence, the heat he radiated, the steady rhythm of his breathing. In the darkness, barriers seemed less solid. "Tell me about your sister," she said quietly. "Not how she died, how she lived." Nietzsche was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Morning Star was joy itself. She would dance for no reason, sing to make the corn grow taller. When she smiled, warriors would fight for her attention. "She sounds beautiful." She was, but more than that kind. She would share her food with dogs, tend injured birds, argue with Mother about helping Mexican traders who came to our camps. A soft laugh. "Mother said she had too much heart for this hard world. Maybe the world needs more hearts like hers." "Perhaps, but such hearts break easily." His arm tightened slightly around her. Tell me of your mother. You wear her necklace always. Sarah touched the cameo at her throat. Elizabeth. She was everything my father wasn't. Gentle, educated, musical. She played piano, hauled it all the way from St. Louis in our wagon. Even in that rough cabin, she insisted on beauty. Flowers on the table, books on shelves, music in the evenings. She sounds like Morning Star in White Woman's world. Yes. Sarah's throat tightened. The fever took her slowly. I watched her fade like a melody growing quieter until silence swallowed it. Father burned the piano after. Said it was foolishness we couldn't afford. They sat in shared silence. Two people who'd lost gentle souls to a harsh world. The cave's darkness held their confessions like a vessel, separate from the complications of daylight. I had a man I would marry, Nietzsche said suddenly. Before the soldiers came to our winter camp, dawn light, we were to wed when spring came. Sarah tensed. She'd assumed, but of course he'd had a life before becoming her captor. What happened to her? Soldiers shot her as she ran. Sport for them seeing who could bring down the most women and children. I found her body by the river, her wedding dress half finished in her hands. His voice was steady, but Sarah felt the tremor in his chest. After that, I cared only for war, for making them pay. And now I am tired. We fight, we run, we die, and nothing changes. The white tide rises higher each season. Sometimes I think Morning Star and Dawn Light were fortunate they do not see our world ending. Sarah turned in his arms, trying to see his face in the darkness. It doesn't have to end. Treaties. The word was bitter. Papers that mean nothing when whites want what we have. They promise land, then take it back. Promise peace, then send soldiers. Promise food, then let us starve. He touched her face, fingers ghosting over her cheek. Why do you think I took you? Not just revenge, desperation. If holding white women keeps soldiers from attacking, perhaps some of us survive. But it doesn't work that way. They'll come harder because of me. I know this now. Another failure to add to the rest. His thumb traced her jaw. Yet I cannot fully regret it. The air between them charged with a sudden tension. Sarah knew she should pull away. Return to her side of the cave. This was dangerous ground, captor and captive finding connection in shared loss. But the darkness, the isolation, the strange intimacy of confession held her still. Nietzsche, she whispered, not knowing what she meant to say. He made a sound part sigh, part growl, and his hand slid into her hair. For a heartbeat, they hovered on the edge of something irreversible. Then he released her, gently but firmly pushing her away. Sleep, he commanded roughly. Tomorrow brings challenges enough without adding foolishness tonight. Sarah retreated, wrapping herself in her torn dress and wounded pride. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his fingers in her hair, heard the ragged edge in his voice. When had hatred become something far more complicated? When had her captor become a man with his own grief, his own doubts? Morning brought new problems. Their water was nearly gone. No sign of the foraging party's trail remained. Nietzsche studied the sky, the rocks, seeking some clue to direction, but the storm had rewritten the landscape's language. There, he finally said, pointing toward a line of darker stone. Water flows toward those formations sometimes. We follow. They walked through rising heat, rationing their last mouthfuls of water. Sarah's lips cracked, her throat burned, but she matched Nietzsche step for step, pride keeping her upright when her body wanted to fold. Midday brought a gift, a lone barrel cactus, its flesh holding precious moisture. Nietzsche cut it carefully, showing Sarah how to squeeze water from the pulp. It was bitter, barely enough, but it bought them time. You're learning, he said with something like approval. I had a good teacher. She meant Joseph, but saw him take it differently. They found the spring as sunset approached a hidden seep in a rock cleft. barely a trickle but pure and cold. They drank deeply, filled the gourd, splashed faces and hands. The simple pleasure of water was overwhelming. We camp here tonight, Nietzsche decided. Tomorrow, with clear sky, I will find our path. They made a cold camp in the rocks above the spring, this time, when darkness brought cold. Sarah didn't wait for invitation. She settled against him naturally, his warmth familiar now. Last night, she began carefully. What almost cannot happen, he finished. You are my captive. To take advantage would be without honor. And if I weren't captive, the question hung between them. Dangerous as a loaded gun. Nietzsche was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was carefully neutral. Then you would be in St. Louis, married to your Thomas, never knowing Apache existed except in stories. And I would be dead or on reservation, the last of a dying people. We are who we are because the world made us so. It was truth, stark and undeniable. Yet Sarah found herself grieving for possibilities that could never exist. In another world, another time, might they have met as equals? Might understanding have come without violence and loss? Your Thomas, Nietzsche said suddenly. You love him. Sarah considered the question honestly. I thought I did. He's good, kind, stable. Everything a woman should want. But love, I'm not sure I knew what that meant. It was just what came next, what was expected. And now I don't know anything anymore. She laughed shakily. A month ago, my biggest worry was whether my wedding dress had too much lace. Now I'm lost in the desert with an Apache warrior, and nothing makes sense. Perhaps that is when truth becomes clearest, when all the expected things fall away. They talked through the night about everything and nothing, about his childhood racing horses across endless grasslands, about her attempts to teach ranch hands to read, about dreams deferred and paths not taken. The strange intimacy of the cave returned, stronger for being fought. When dawn finally came, painting the rocks in shades of rose and gold, they were no longer quite captor and captive. They were two people who'd seen beneath each other's surface to the complicated truth below. Nietzsche studied the morning sky, then pointed with confidence. There, I know those peaks now. Half a day's walk, perhaps less. As they prepared to leave their shelter, Sarah caught his arm. What happens when we return? Do we pretend this didn't happen? What is this? His eyes searched hers. We survived together. Nothing more needs to be said. But they both knew it was a lie. Something had shifted in that cave, in their shared darkness and whispered truths. Her defiance had cracked his savage pride. Yes, but perhaps his pride had cracked something in her as well. Some certainty about who was enemy and who was friend. What was captivity and what was choice. The journey back to camp would be simple compared to navigating what lay between them now. Sarah understood, with a mixture of fear and anticipation, that the real wilderness wasn't in the desert around them. It was in the unexplored territory of two hearts finding connection where none should exist. The scout arrived at dawn, his lathered horse speaking of hard riding through the night. Sarah woke to urgent voices outside the wickiup, Nietzsche already armed and listening to the warrior's report. Even without understanding Apache, she could read the gravity in their tones. Soldiers, Nietzsche told her tersely. 2 days north, many of them, with Apache scouts from the reservation. They search for you. Sarah's heart lurched. After 3 weeks in the camp, the outside world had begun to feel like a dream. Now it came crashing back. Thomas was searching for her. The army was coming. Her ordeal might soon end. Yet why did the thought bring more confusion than relief? The camp erupted in controlled chaos. Warriors prepared weapons while women packed essential supplies. Children were hushed, dogs muzzled. This was clearly a practice drill. The Apache had fled before soldiers too many times. Where will you go? Sarah asked, watching Nietzsche strap on his ammunition belt. South, deeper into the mountains, perhaps across the border to Mexico. He paused in his preparations, studying her. This is what you wanted. Your people come for you. I know. The words came out smaller than intended. Then why do you look like someone has died? Before she could answer, Nana appeared at the entrance. The elderly woman's face was grim as she spoke rapidly in Apache. Nietzsche's expression darkened with each word. What is it? Sarah demanded. The council meets. Some say we should. He hesitated. Remove the reason soldiers hunt us. Kill her. He meant some wanted to kill her. Sarah's blood chilled. I will speak for you, Nietzsche said quietly. But sentiment runs against keeping you. Too many have lost too much to soldiers. The council convened as the sun climbed higher. Sarah waited outside, guarded but not bound, watching the debate through the circle of bodies. Voices rose and fell like tide waves, some angry, others measured. Nietzsche spoke at length, gesturing emphatically. Nana added her voice, walking stick punctuating her words. Leilu was among those arguing most vehemently, her scarred face animated with passion. At one point she looked directly at Sarah, and the hatred there was palpable. Yet something else flickered beneath a strange sort of respect, perhaps even regret. Joseph appeared at Sarah's side. It goes poorly, he said softly. Fear speaks louder than wisdom. Many believe killing you will make soldiers turn back. Would it? The medicine man shrugged. Soldiers need little excuse to attack Apache. Your death might bring worse revenge. He studied her with clouded eyes. You have learned much these weeks, worked hard. Some see this. But not enough of them. Perhaps, perhaps not. Nana speaks of another way. Inside the circle, Nietzsche's grandmother had taken the speaking position. Her voice carried the authority of years, of survival against all odds. Whatever she proposed caused immediate uproar. Warriors shouted objections. Women argued among themselves. But Nana continued, steady as stone until the noise died down. She spoke at length, pointing to Sarah, to the mountains, to the sky itself. When she finished, silence stretched taut as a bowstring. The vote, when it came, was close. Sarah counted the hands raised, heart hammering, a single vote's difference, but it was enough. The council dispersed, some clearly unhappy with the decision. Nietzsche returned to her, relief and something else warring in his expression. You live. More than that, Nana proposed the adoption ceremony. Make you one of us. Not captive, but Apache. Then soldiers cannot say we hold a white woman against her will. Sarah's mind reeled. Adoption. But I can't just become... It is ceremony, but also choice. His eyes held hers steadily. No one forces this, but without it. When we flee south, you remain prisoner. With it, you become free to choose your path. Free to leave. Free to choose, he repeated carefully. That night, as the camp prepared for the ceremony and the flight that would follow, Sarah found herself at the spring where she'd first carried water. The same spring where Karuk had threatened her, where she'd learned to navigate the complex currents of Apache life. Thomas would come. He would find the abandoned camp, track them if possible, rescue her from her savage captors. He would take her home to her father, to their planned wedding, to the life mapped out since birth. Safe, predictable, everything she'd thought she wanted. So why did the thought feel like a stone in her stomach? You think hard for someone about to be rescued. Sarah turned to find Leilu behind her. The scarred woman rarely sought her out except to torment. Now she seemed different, less hostile, more thoughtful. I should be happy, Sarah said carefully. Should? Leilu sat on a rock, surprising Sarah further. Dangerous word. I should hate you, white woman who brings soldiers to kill more Apache. Should want you dead. But you work. You learn. When Karuk came for you, you did not beg or weep. You stand straight when others would break. She touched her scarred cheek absently. White soldiers gave me this when I was 12 summers. Said I was too pretty for Apache girl. Needed marking. Sarah's stomach turned. I'm sorry. I do not want your sorrow. I want you to understand. We are all marked by this war between our peoples. Some marks show outside, others inside. You came as enemy, but maybe you become something else. I don't know what I'm becoming anymore. Leilu stood, her usual hardness returning but tempered now. Then, tonight you find out, ceremony is not just words. It changes a person, if they let it. Choose carefully. White woman. Both paths have price. The ceremony began at sunset. Sarah had expected something elaborate, but Apache practicality showed even in their rituals. A fire, elders in their best clothing, warriors and women forming a circle. Simple elements that somehow carried profound weight. Nana led her through the preparations. Her ruined dress was replaced with Apache clothing, a deerskin skirt and blouse, moccasins that had walked many miles. Her hair was unbound, flowing free. The cameo necklace remained even Nana recognized its importance. You understand what this means? The old woman asked as she painted symbols on Sarah's cheeks with red ochre. Not just ceremony. You accept Apache ways. Apache struggles. Our enemies become your enemies. Our survival, your survival. And if soldiers come, if my people, Sarah's voice caught, if I have to choose. Then you choose, but after tonight, you choose as Apache woman, not white captive. The ceremony itself was a blur of smoke and chanting, of hands on her shoulders and words in a language she was only beginning to understand. At one point, Nietzsche stood before her, speaking formally. Joseph translated in whispers vows of protection, of acceptance, of shared destiny. When Nietzsche finished, it was Sarah's turn. The words Joseph had taught her felt strange on her tongue, promises to honor the Apache way, to share their struggles, to walk the difficult path between worlds. As she spoke, she saw faces in the firelight, some still skeptical, others cautiously welcoming. Then Nana brought forth a knife, its blade gleaming. Sarah knew what came next, Joseph had explained. A small cut, blood mingled with earth, the physical bond to match the spiritual. She extended her hand without hesitation. The blade bit sharp and clean. Her blood dripped onto the ground, followed by drops from Nietzsche's hand. Then Nana's. The earth drank it all equally. When Nana spoke the final words and the people responded in unison, something shifted in Sarah's chest, a door closing. Another opening. It is done, Nana announced. She is walks between worlds, daughter of the people. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Walks between worlds. They saw her. Truly saw what she was becoming, neither fully white nor Apache, but something balanced precariously between. As the ceremony ended and people began the final preparations for flight, Sarah found herself standing with Nietzsche at the edge of camp. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars she'd watched from her father's ranch, yet transformed by perspective. Regrets? Nietzsche asked. I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow, or next year, or... She stopped, struck by sudden understanding. This is why you agreed to it, not just to save me from the council. You're giving me a choice when the soldiers come. Perhaps. He was quiet a moment. Or perhaps I am selfish man who does not wish to see you go. The admission hung between them, dangerous as a lit fuse. Sarah turned to face him fully. And if I choose to stay, then you learn what it truly means to be Apache. The running, the hunger, the watching our world shrink season by season. His hand rose to cup her cheek, thumb tracing the ceremonial paint. It is not life for soft white woman. Good thing I'm not soft anymore. He smiled then, rare and genuine. No, you are not. A shout from the camp interrupted whatever might have come next. Time to move. The soldiers were closer than expected. They would travel through the night to gain distance. As Sarah gathered her few possessions, she found her hands steady despite the chaos around her. Tomorrow would bring pursuit, danger, impossible choices. But tonight, she was walks between worlds. And that name felt more true than Sarah McKenna ever had. The adoption ceremony had ended one life and begun another. What that new life would hold, only the desert knew. But for the first time since her capture, Sarah faced the uncertainty without fear. She had chosen not Thomas or Nietzsche, not White or Apache, but herself. Whatever came next, that choice would guide her through the darkness. The camp dissolved into the night like smoke, leaving only cold fire pits to mark their passing. By dawn, they would be miles south, deeper into the labyrinth of stone and shadow that had sheltered the Apache for generations. And somewhere behind them, soldiers would follow, carrying with them the world Sarah had known and the woman she had been. But that woman was gone now, transformed by ceremony and choice into something new, something that could survive whatever the desert demanded. Walks Between Worlds shouldered her pack and followed her people into the night. The army found them at Skeleton Canyon, that maze of ravines and ancient bones where so many had died before. Sarah saw the dust cloud first, a brown smudge against the morning sky that meant only one thing: cavalry, many horses, coming fast. "They have us," Nietzsche said grimly, lowering his field glasses. "The canyon narrows ahead. We cannot outrun them with women and children." The Apache had fled for 3 days, pushing hard through brutal terrain. But soldiers with fresh mounts and reservation scouts who knew the land had slowly closed the gap. Now, with their backs to the canyon walls, the band faced the confrontation they'd tried to avoid. "How many?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "2 companies at least, maybe more." He turned to her, face carved from stone. "They come for you. If you go to them now, they'll attack anyway." Sarah had learned enough about frontier justice to know the truth. My presence changes nothing now. Warriors took positions among the rocks, while women and children huddled in what shelter they could find. Sarah helped Nana organize the defense, gathering ammunition, preparing bandages they would surely need. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind reeled with the approach of her old world. Then she saw him. Thomas rode at the front of the column, his fair hair visible even at distance. Captain Morrison commanded the troops, but Thomas was clearly the driving force, leaning forward in his saddle. Searching, desperate. Sarah's heart clenched. He'd come for her, ridden into Apache territory, risked everything to find her. The good, solid man who'd offered her a good, solid life, who deserved better than what she was about to do. The cavalry halted just outside rifle range. A white flag appeared. Parley. Nietzsche spoke quickly to the warriors, establishing fields of fire, preparing for treachery. Then he looked at Sarah. "They will want to see you, to know you live." "I know. You do not have to stay. The ceremony, it gave you choice, not chains." Sarah met his dark eyes steadily. "I made my choice." They met the soldiers in the open ground between positions. Nietzsche, 2 warriors, and Sarah. On the other side, Captain Morrison, Thomas, and a sergeant with the weather-beaten look of a career soldier. The tension stretched taut enough to snap. "Sarah!" Thomas dismounted before the captain could speak, starting toward her. The Apache warrior's hands moved to weapons, stopping him cold. "My God, what have they done to you?" Sarah looked down at her self-Apache dress, skin darkened by sun, hands calloused from work. But it was the interior changes that mattered, the ones Thomas couldn't see. "Hello, Thomas," her voice came out steady. "I'm all right." "All right, you're dressed like a savage, He visibly fought for control. "It doesn't matter. I'm here now. You're safe." Captain Morrison cleared his throat. "Miss McKenna, I'm here to secure your release and return you to your family." These Apache will be taken to the reservation where they belong. Or killed if they resist, Nietzsche said in clear English. The captain's eyes hardened. That's up to them? Captain, Sarah stepped forward. These people saved my life. The desert would have killed me. They've shown me kindness. Kindness, Thomas exploded. They murdered Reverend Whitmore, Mrs. Dobson, they kidnapped you. Yes, Sarah couldn't deny the truth. But I've learned it's not that simple. Nothing out here is simple. What are you saying? Thomas's voice cracked. Sarah, you're not making sense. It's the captivity. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. The words emerged with surprising force. Thomas, you're a good man. You deserve a wife who wants the life you're offering. But that's not me. Not anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Captain Morrison's hand moved to his sidearm. The Apache warriors tensed. Violence balanced on a knife's edge. You're staying with them. Thomas's disbelief was painful to witness. With the savages who killed innocent people. With the people who've become my family. Sarah felt Nietzsche shift beside her, but didn't look at him. This moment was hers alone. I've been adopted into their band. I'm not a captive anymore. Adopted? The captain's voice dripped skepticism. Miss McKenna, you're clearly under duress. No white woman would choose. I chose. Sarah pulled back her sleeve, showing the healing cut from the ceremony. Blood and earth and promises made. I am walks between worlds now. Thomas staggered as if struck. This isn't you. The Sarah I know would never... The Sarah you knew died with that stagecoach. The truth hurt to speak, but needed saying. I'm sorry. Thomas, sorry for the pain this causes, but I won't live a lie. You'd rather live with murderers. Now Sarah did look at Nietzsche, saw the controlled fury there, the effort not to respond to the insult. She thought of his sister, of Dawn Light, of all the Apache losses that never made it into newspapers back east. I'd rather live with truth, however harsh, than comfortable lies. She faced Thomas again. Go home. Find someone who can be the wife you need. Remember me kindly, if you can. I'll never accept this. Thomas's voice went hard. Captain, she's obviously been corrupted, brainwashed. We take her by force if necessary. Try, Nietzsche spoke softly, but menace threaded every syllable. See how many die for one woman who does not wish rescue. Captain Morrison studied the situation with a soldier's eye, the Apache positions, the terrain advantages, the cost in blood. Miss McKenna, I need to hear it from you, clear and direct. Are you choosing to remain with these Apache of your own free will? Sarah felt the weight of history on her shoulders. How many would die if she answered wrong? How many futures balanced on her words? I choose myself, she said finally. I choose who I've become among these people. I choose to stay. The captain nodded slowly. Then I have no legal authority to remove you. He ignored Thomas's strangled protest. But know this, you're making yourself an enemy of the United States. The protection of law no longer covers you. I understand. Sarah, please. Thomas made one last attempt. Your father think what this will do to him. That arrow found its mark. Sarah thought of James McKenna, alone on his ranch, waiting for a daughter who would never return, but even that pain couldn't change what she'd become. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I love him. But tell him I'm free. The parley ended in bitter silence. As the two groups separated, Thomas called out one final time, I'll never stop loving you. Sarah paused, but didn't turn. Then love who I was. Let who I am go. Back at the Apache positions, the War Council convened quickly. The soldiers hadn't withdrawn. They'd pulled back to better ground, preparing for attack. They will come at dawn. Nietzsche predicted, Your Thomas does not accept defeat easily. He's not my Thomas. Sarah checked the rifle Joseph had taught her to use, and he's never faced Apache in these mountains. Through the day, both sides prepared. Sarah helped dig rifle pits, gathered stones for barricades, did everything but think about the morning's confrontation. When sunset came, painting the canyon walls in blood, she found herself beside Nishi on the rim, watching the soldier camp. "You could still go," he said quietly. "In darkness, I could get you close enough." "Stop!" Sarah turned to face him. "How many times must I choose before you believe me?" "It is not belief, it is—" He struggled for words. "You gave up everything. For what life of running, fighting, watching us die one by one?" "For truth, for becoming who I really am instead of who others expected." She touched his face, feeling the tension there. "And for you, though you're too stubborn to see it." His hand covered hers. "Sarah?" "My name is Walks Between Worlds." "Between worlds, yes. But which world claims your heart?" Instead of answering, she kissed him. It was nothing like the chaste pecks Thomas had given her. This was fire and desperation and promises too deep for words. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw her answer reflected in his eyes. "The attack comes with dawn," he said roughly. If we survive, we will survive." Sarah's certainty surprised her. "The spirits that named me didn't bring me here to die in this canyon. They spent the night in preparation and vigilance." Sarah dozed fitfully against Nietzsche's shoulder, waking to check positions, to share water with nervous youngsters facing their first real battle. When the eastern sky began to pale, everyone was ready. The attack came exactly as predicted, a cavalry charge up the canyon while riflemen tried to pin down the Apache positions. But Morrison had underestimated his enemy. The Apache had spent the night turning the canyon into a death trap. Boulders rolled down from the rim. Hidden riflemen caught the cavalry in crossfire. What should have been overwhelming force became chaos as horses screamed and fell, as soldiers found themselves trapped in a box canyon with walls of lead. Sarah fired and reloaded with mechanical precision, trying not to think about the boys in blue who fell. These could have been her protectors, her rescuers. Instead, they were simply men trying to kill her family. The battle raged through the morning. 3 times the soldiers tried to storm the Apache positions. 3 times they were thrown back with the losses. But the Apache paid 2 warriors fell. Ammunition ran low. Victory balanced on a hair. Then Sarah saw Thomas. He'd joined the final assault, probably against orders, leading a squad up the ravine below her position. Their eyes met across the distance, a moment of perfect recognition. She could have fired, should have, by all rules of battle. Instead, she aimed deliberately high, the bullet sparking off rocks above his head. "Go back!" she screamed, knowing he couldn't hear over the gunfire. "Go back!" He hesitated, torn between duty and the woman he'd loved. That hesitation saved his life as Apache fire swept the ravine. His squad retreated, dragging wounded. Thomas cast one last look at her position before disappearing into the smoke. A bugle sounded. The soldiers were withdrawing. The Apache had won, but at cost. As the dust settled, Sarah helped tend wounded, close the eyes of the dead. Victory tasted of ashes and blood. Yet they'd survived. The band could flee deeper into Mexico, beyond army reach. As they prepared to move out, Nietzsche found her. "Your soldier, you could have killed him." "Yes." "But you did not." "No." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I chose who I am. That doesn't mean I must kill who I was." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "You truly are walks between worlds. May you find peace in both." But peace was a luxury none of them could afford. As the Apache disappeared into the canyon's depths, Sarah took one last look at the battlefield, somewhere beyond the smoke. Thomas was returning to a world that would never understand her choice. She'd chosen her path. Now she would walk it, no matter where it led. The Apache vanished into the mountains, leaving only blood and questions behind. The Army would claim victory, hostile Apache driven from U.S. soil. The Apache would know truth they'd survived another day. And Sarah, she was no longer between worlds. She'd found her place at last. The courtroom in Fort Grant was stifling despite the December cold outside. Sarah sat in chains beside Nishi, their capture 6 months after Skeleton Canyon still raw. They'd been taken during a raid on their winter camp betrayed by Apache scouts who'd chosen survival over loyalty, surrounded while the warriors were away hunting. Judge William Thornton presided, his face carved from Eastern propriety and Western prejudice. The gallery packed with townspeople, soldiers, reporters come to witness the sensational trial of the white Apache woman and her savage captor. Sarah Elizabeth McKenna, the judge intoned. You stand accused of treason against the United States, of taking up arms against federal troops, of rejecting civilization for savagery. Sarah rose, chains clanking. She'd refused the dress they'd offered, standing in her Apache clothing with dignity intact despite months of captivity. My name is Walks Between Worlds. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The judge hammered for silence. You will answer to your Christian name in this court. Then this court refuses to see who I truly am. Thomas sat in the witness section, older now, married to a banker's daughter from Tucson. His testimony had been damning how she'd rejected rescue, chosen her captors over freedom. His words dripped with the hurt that still festered. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced man named Harrison, painted her as victim turned collaborator, corrupted by her savage captors. She forgot her race, her God, her very humanity. When Sarah finally spoke in her defense, the courtroom fell silent. You call them savage, she began, voice carrying despite exhaustion. Yet who showed savagery, the Apache who took me in, taught me survival, made me family, or the soldiers who slaughter children in their beds, who gift blankets poisoned with disease? You dare compare, Harrison began. I dare speak truth. Sarah's eyes found the judge. Yes, I took up arms. To defend the only family I had left. Yes, I rejected your civilization, because I saw what it truly offers: broken treaties, stolen land, genocide wrapped in pretty words. She turned to address the gallery. Seeing hatred and curiosity wore in their faces. You want me to say I was forced, that I was weak, broken, mindlessly following my captors. But I chose, every day, I chose to stay. And him, the judge pointed at Nietzsche, who'd remained silent throughout, understanding enough English to follow, but refusing to acknowledge the court's authority. Did you choose him as well? Sarah met Nietzsche's eyes, saw the same fire that had drawn her from the beginning. He was savage in pride, yes, but that pride protected his people, honored his ancestors, demanded justice for losses you'll never acknowledge. And yes, I chose him, not as captor, but as equal, as partner, as the man who saw me truly when my own people saw only what they expected. The crowd erupted. Women fanned themselves dramatically. Men shouted about race mixing, about natural order. The judge hammered frantically. Order, I will have order. When quiet returned, his face was mottled. Your admission of Congress with this savage only confirms your fall from grace. Grace, Sarah laughed, bitter as alkali water. Where was grace when Morning Star was taken, when dawn light bled out in the sand? You speak of grace while building your world on Apache bones. The trial continued for 3 days. Witnesses testified: soldiers from Skeleton Canyon, Apache taken prisoner who refused to speak against her. Character witnesses for the prosecution painted her former life in glowing terms. The tragedy of her fall. But Sarah's moment came when Leilu was brought in chains to testify. The scarred woman who'd once tormented her stood proud despite her shackles. The white woman, Leilu said in halting English. She earned her name. Walks between worlds. She did not steal from us. She became us, my sister in suffering, in survival. Savage testimony means nothing. Harrison dismissed. Then you prove your own savagery." Sarah shot back, refusing to hear truth because of the mouth that speaks it. Nietzsche finally spoke on the trial's last day, his voice carrying the weight of mountains. "You try us for fighting for our land, for protecting our families, for refusing to disappear quietly. If this is crime, then I am guilty 1,000 times." He looked at Sarah. Speaking in Apache, Joseph, brought as translator, refused to interpret until threatened with contempt. He says she brought light to darkness, that the sun sets in her hair and rises in her courage, that if loving her is crime, he welcomes your punishment. Sarah's tears came then, the first she'd shown, not for herself, but for the beauty of his words in this ugly place, for love declared in chains. The verdict surprised no one. Nietzsche death by hanging for murder, kidnapping, inciting violence. Sarah imprisonment pending potential exchange to a women's reformatory, her sex the only thing saving her from the noose. As they read the sentences, Sarah stood, "Your Honor, I request to share my husband's fate." Shocked silence. The judge sputtered, "You were never legally wed. By Apache law, we are married. By the laws that matter, we are one. If you hang him, hang me beside him." She turned to the gallery. "Show your true colors. Prove that your justice is nothing but vengeance dressed in legal robes." The crowd stirred uneasily. Hanging a white woman, even a fallen one, was different from hanging an Apache warrior. The newspapers would feast on it. Eastern sympathizers would protest. "The court will consider," the judge managed. That night, in adjacent cells, Sarah and Nietzsche spoke through the bars. "You should not have asked for death," he said quietly. "You should not have gotten caught protecting me during the raid." "I would do it again." "As would I." Sarah pressed against the bars, their fingers barely touching. "Do you remember what you said, that fire must learn when to burn and when to bank its flames?" "I remember. My fire burns for truth, for justice, for you. Let them see it consume their comfortable lies." The judge's final decision came at dawn. Sarah would not hang the political cost too high. Instead, indefinite imprisonment, with the possibility of release if she renounced her Apache ways and submitted to rehabilitation. "Never," she said simply. As they led Nietzsche to the scaffold, Sarah was permitted a final moment. They stood in chains, guards watching nervously, the crowd gathering for morning entertainment. "He was savage in pride," Sarah said, loud enough for all to hear, "but also human. He freed me when he let me choose. You bind me because you fear that choice." Nietzsche touched her face, gentle despite the shackles. "Walks between worlds," he said in Apache. Then in English, "Live, remember, speak our truth." They killed him as the sun rose. But Sarah didn't look away. She memorized his courage, his defiance to the end. The crowd expected her to collapse, to finally break. Instead, she stood straighter. "You've killed a man," she told them, voice carrying like thunder. "But you've created a voice. I'll spend whatever years remain telling the truth you want buried. Every comfortable lie, every broken treaty, every murdered child, I'll speak their names until you're forced to hear." They took her away as the crowd dispersed, uncomfortable with the mirror she'd held to their faces. In her cell, Sarah, forever now walks between worlds, began to plan. Letters to Eastern newspapers, testimonies to sympathetic ears. The battle for Apache survival would continue, just with different weapons. She thought of Nietzsche, of Morningstar, of all the ghosts that would walk with her. Her body was imprisoned, but her spirit remained free, savage in its pride, human in its truth, eternal in its refusal to surrender. The world had taken everything, her old life, her new family, her love. But it could not take what she'd become. She was the bridge between worlds, and she would not let either side forget what had been lost in the crossing. In the end, perhaps that was the greatest defiance of all, not just surviving, but ensuring the story survived too. The truth, complicated and painful and necessary. She was walks between worlds, and she would walk until the path was clear for others to follow. Thank you for listening to this story of love and defiance in the Wild West. Where are you experiencing this tale? Please share your location in the comments so we can connect with listeners around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Sarah and Nietzsche's journey. Your perspectives on this complex story of two worlds colliding would mean so much to us.